So tonight we're going to discuss a very kind of emotional. I call it emotional because a lot of people who are coming out of Christianity, they want to convert to Judaism, and they are disheartened by the fact that it takes so long. They want to go to a rabbi. I won't mention any names, but they want to go to a rabbi who can convert them in 6 months and make it happen super, super fast. The very first time I even ever heard of that, even before I knew that there was an issue or wasn't an issue with converting, and why they wanted to get it done so fast, my initial thought was, well, if this is going to be like a lifelong change, and it's not like you're 90, and you're 35 years old or you're 50 years old, perfect health. I mean, what's the big deal if it takes a long time to do it, if this is going to be your final move? But more importantly, in landscaping, they have trees that you can buy that will sprout up really, really fast, but then they die really fast. That's the caveat. You can have a really pretty lawn in 3 years, or you can take your time, wait 10 or 15 years, and have something that will actually last. So there's realistic parallels there. So I would like to just cover the idea. Why is it important? Because I've been finding out lately that it's actually important that it takes longer. Even they say that people who have babies, right, when they're born, you get these parents that are really proud. My son started walking after 6 months. But doctors will tell you that the longer they crawl, the more long-term memory they develop. You see, so rushing through things to me has never been a good thing anyway.
The more time they have to bang into things, also.
Right.
fall, whatever.
Yeah. So we'll cover that aspect, but also as you and I were talking earlier, I think it would be a good idea to because there are a lot of people out there who believe that, firmly, that anything that's God-related should be free. You shouldn't charge for it. So we'll let you cover that aspect for it as well. And so with that said, I'm going to turn it over to you, Rabbi. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to hit that like button, turn on notifications if you've subscribed already. If you want to join, click the join button. That's great. A lot of perks. We'll talk about that later. But right now, Rabbi, it's your show. Take it away.
Okay, so it's always a pleasure. One thing you mentioned, which is very true, and I hear this more often than not, and that is, why does it take so long? Why, I want to convert now, yesterday, which I do understand. People have come out of Christianity, paganism, whatever, realize the Torah is the truth. They want to go through a conversion. They want to hit the other side, cross over, so to speak. They don't want to be a Noahide for any number of reasons. Let's make clear one thing, and that is, if God wanted everyone to be Jewish, they would be, which means that there's no obligation to convert. If somebody wants to, and they go through the proper channels and the proper process, very good. If they don't want to, I had someone once tell me, I'd love to convert, but I like to eat shrimp too much. So, okay, not everyone's cut out for conversion. Not everyone can move, which is probably the single biggest obstacle to conversion, is that you have to move into a Jewish community. Now, the problem with that is everyone's going to say, and this is really the heart of the issue, is that it doesn't say anywhere in the Talmud, it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah, it doesn't say anywhere that I have to live amongst Jews, right? That's clear, it doesn't. But at the same time, if you don't live amongst Jews, then the question obviously is, how are you going to know what it means to be a Jew? Right? The Rambam in the Laws of Repentance says there are 24 things that stops a person from actually doing tshuva, from doing repentance. Right? What is that? What is one of them? Separating yourself from the community. Now, someone's going to say, but who says I have to move within walking distance of the synagogue? So I'll be there. I'll live within 20 minutes, half an hour. What's the big deal? So there's the whole thing about going to synagogue, being part of the community, being there for Shabbos, right? Certainly pretty important, even for a woman. And even if a woman doesn't have an obligation to pray in synagogue, and different things, okay. But, you got to live within striking distance, according to probably most Beis-Dins, most rabbinical courts, is going to be within a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles, maybe 2 miles maximum, maybe a little bit more, depending. But you got to be within striking distance. So someone will say, they've been looking at the Talmud, and the Talmud tractate Yevamos talks about conversion, where the main topic is, right? It's in a few pages over there, right? Speaks about it. And the question is, over there, what does it say? It says you only have to know, a little bit. Someone will teach them, or they'll learn some of the stringencies with some of the leniencies. If they've learned a little bit, you convert them. Now, someone's going to say, well, we go according to rabbinical law, right? That's really the bottom line. We go according to what the rabbis tell us. So we're going to listen to the rabbis, and the rabbis are going to say, that doesn't wash. It's not going to wash today. Now, the problem is, why not? Why not? Why can't a person learn a little bit, some of the stringencies, some of the leniencies, and that's it, and we'll convert them. So we're talking about a different era. 100% we're talking about a different era. Because it used to be maybe even 300 years ago, 400 years ago, maybe even less, that if a non-Jew wanted to learn about Torah, etc., they could learn by osmosis. They could see what goes on. It's a different world. It's a totally different world. Now, I don't think it should take, so long. The average amount of time, let's say, is about 2 years, give or take. Person certainly has to learn, right? They have to learn over here. But, I'm not saying it has to take 5 years. Or for some people I know, it took longer than that for a number of different factors, number of different reasons. But the idea is someone's going to say, but I don't have to know all that much. Let's break it down. What is important that a person knows? Right? What's important according to Judaism? Shabbos. Shabbos is pretty crucial. Right? Why is Shabbos pretty crucial? Because Friday nights, when we make Kiddush, we mention Genesis chapter 2, the beginning of Genesis chapter 2, which talks about creation. When it talks about creation, we have to give testimony that God created the world. It's one of the reasons we stand when we make Kiddush. Why do we stand? To give testimony. That being the case, if a Jew doesn't make Kiddush, right, doesn't keep Shabbos, the punishment's pretty severe, right? What does the Torah tell me? Punishment is that you would get killed if there was a Sanhedrin, a Jewish Supreme Court, if they got warned for whatever the prohibition was, and then they get spiritually cut off. So there are certain things that carry a death penalty sentence, even though someone will say, but isn't it true that the Mishnah in Mako says, the last Mishnah, I think in the first chapter, talks about if the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court, killed once in 7 years, once in 70 years, that would be considered a bloody court. Right? So you're going to say, well, they never really killed anyone, so what's the point? The point is to show severity. Right? Show severity of, this transgression. So Shabbos, a person is acknowledging the fact that God is in control, that God runs the world, that God created the world. Shabbos is pretty crucial. Okay, what else would a person have to know? Kashrus, right? Laws of kashrus, difference, separation, milk and meat, and how many hours, and separate pots and pans, and separate dishwashers, and all kinds of things. It's complicated. How to use an oven. You want to use it for milk and meat. How to use a dishwasher, right? What are the issues that can come up in a kitchen? It's also pretty crucial. Also, what am I allowed to eat? Right? What type of meat? Right? Which things are forbidden? Ritual slaughter is a pretty big, it's a lot to learn, a lot to know, right? So we're not teaching that, obviously, but we want to make sure people understand, what the differences are, what you're supposed to do. Now, speaking about that, that's also pretty crucial. Why? Because if a Jew doesn't keep kosher, it affects them in a negative way, right? One reason, even though it hasn't been proven by science, and even though things that haven't been proven by science doesn't really mean it's not true, right? But many commentaries say we are what we eat. We don't eat animals that are carnivorous. Why? Because that could have effect on our soul. Now, you're going to say, or someone's going to say, but a non-Jew, right? One of the great commentators in Leviticus chapter 11, beginning of Leviticus chapter 11, which speaks about what animals I'm allowed to eat and not eat. This doesn't necessarily apply to a non-Jew. Why not? In general, because this commentary points out that when a person, non-Jews, they eat all kinds of things, and we see it doesn't affect them. Totally doesn't affect them, right? So therefore, if it doesn't affect them, so why would a non-Jew keep it? Why would they do it? It doesn't affect them. Maybe except for eating the bats in Wuhan. Maybe that's a different issue, right? But if they eat all kinds of creepy crawly things and anything that moves and it doesn't affect them physically, so to speak, then certainly it's probably not going to affect them spiritually. But the point is, why would a non-Jew do it, right? It doesn't have any benefit for them, right? So kashrut is pretty crucial, right? Kashrut is pretty crucial over here. So then I also have blessings, right? I eat a piece of fruit, I eat bread, all these different things. I have to know what the blessing is. Why do I have to know what the blessing is? Because if a Jew eats something and they don't make a blessing, so a person's considered a thief. It's considered you're getting benefit from something, certainly in this world, and you're not thanking the one who gave it to you, right? 100%. You're not thanking someone. So, therefore, blessings, something I have to know. And the holidays, of course, I have to know what the holidays are all about, right? We're starting the new month of Elul, coming up, which you have 30 days introspection, right before Rosh Hashanah. You got 10 days of repentance, starting with Rosh Hashanah. Then you got Yom Kippur. And after Yom Kippur, you have Sukkot. 6 months later, you have Passover. Then you have Shavuot. So you have to know what the holidays are. You have to know what they represent. You have to know what I do on them, so to speak. So I got to know about the holidays, right? And prayer also, the Rambam, agrees. And a lot of people agree with the Rambam. And that is that prayer is on a Torah level. A person got an obligation to pray, right? What I'm allowed to pray, how I pray, what I say, all these different things that might be rabbinical, but doesn't matter. Still have an obligation to pray. So I have to know what it means to pray. I have to know what to say. I have to know, these different things. It's going to be a lot harder. Can I pray in Hebrew? Am I obligated to pray in Hebrew? So, obviously the answer is going to be yes, but a person will start praying, I guess, in the language they understand, have to get up to speed. There are a lot of reasons for this. I'm just oversimplifying just to show the importance. And what's the last thing a person would have to know? And the last thing is the 13 principles of faith. 13 principles of faith are, by the Rambam, are crucial for anyone to be considered a Jew, right? God is absolute. God doesn't change. Morality is not relative, so to speak. So that's pretty crucial. God is unique. God is unique in the world. He's not like any other being, in the world. There's prophecy. There's prophecy in Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, the father of all prophets. We have resurrection of the dead. We have coming of the Messiah. We have the fact that God can reward and punish. God knows the thoughts of man. I mean, these things are pretty crucial, certainly for a Jew. A non-Jew doesn't necessarily have to believe in them. I think it's a good thing, but I'm not going to say they're obligated per se. But regardless, when it comes to 13 principles, right, so to speak, a Jew will lose his status as a Jew if they don't keep it. In other words, it doesn't mean they can't repent, right? But the fact is, it's something pretty crucial, right? It's pretty crucial to the fact that that's what makes someone a Jew. So as you can see, A, there are a lot of topics. B, there's a lot to know. There's a heck of a lot to know. There are a lot of details. Blessings come with a lot of details, a lot of confusion. What do I do in this situation? What do I do in that situation? Shabbos, also, plenty of detail. Many, many things, right? Many, many things, over here. So, therefore, a person, if they would, someone asked where's that commentary found? It's the Kli Yakar at the beginning of chapter 11. All right, chapter 11, book of Leviticus. That's the Kli Yakar. So there's a lot of detail, plenty of detail over here. So now, if someone would say, listen, why should it take me so long? Why do I have to, sort of jump through hoops? And we'll speak about that, right? We'll speak about that. But why do I have to jump through hoops over here? Why do I have to know, why do I have to know so much? So the reality is, if we'd allow people to convert in the wrong way, and they only learn a little bit, right? Laws of Shabbos, they will transgress, right? The Chaim, the beginning of the laws of Shabbos in his introduction says there's so many laws, and it's so complex, if you do not review, you will transgress, right? He's not threatening anyone. He's not cursing anyone. He's telling you the reality, right? The reality is that is what's going to happen. Why? Because the laws are so detailed. Now, someone's going to say, come on, that's adding, subtracting to the Torah. Yeah, you have to watch the videos on oral law why that is not, why that is not the case. But be that as it may, if a person doesn't review and constantly review like it's second nature, that a person knows in a situation, I do make a blessing in this case, I don't make a blessing in this case, I can touch this thing on Shabbos, I can't, how do I make Kiddush, how do I do these other rituals, a person will make mistakes. So it's better, as Coffman would say, if a person's a JIT, a Jew in training, right, that's my language, anyone who, is going to use that without my consent, I will sue you, I'm going to patent that. But any case, a JIT has to practice these things. Because I've heard people say as well, come on, how am I allowed to do it? I'm still a non-Jew, but if you don't practice, you're never going to know how to do it. That, that's for sure. So when it comes to Shabbos and it comes to festivals, what's going to be, you can't keep it exactly like a Jew, right? Because God gave it to us. So therefore, anyone who wants to try and usurp that and keep it exactly like a Jew, there's a very severe punishment. So therefore what? Therefore, they have to do something on purpose to break it, to show they're not keeping, they're not keeping Shabbos like a Jew. So, but you have to learn. And if a person doesn't learn, guaranteed, right? This will be Rabbinics 101, 101A. The absolute guarantee, a person will make mistakes. They'll make mistakes. So it's better, certainly as a non-Jew, to make the mistake, because the mistakes really don't count. So you're going to say it's all practice, right? 100% it's all practice. So again, a person may say, well, maybe it should take a lot longer, so I perfect it, and then there'll be less issues later. Okay, right? But if a person's ready to convert and they don't convert, let's say, so then they're going to be punished for that as well. Now, that doesn't mean if they're under onus, right? Let's say a person can't move, or, a person got sick or something happened and they couldn't finish the process, right? If they're under onus, which means it's not their own fault, not that, certainly not their fault, but if they're under onus, okay, right? That's a different issue. But if they had an opportunity to convert, and that's, only God's going to know, right? What that criteria is. But if they had an opportunity, as the Gemara says, right, and the Talmud brings down, if they had an opportunity to convert and they didn't, and they're not under onus, but they could have, also the punishment is severe. We just said before, not everyone has the obligation to convert, right? That's true, right? But if God sees deep in a person's heart, that's what they wanted to do. If a person saw, that would be the case. Sorry, if God saw that deep down the person could have converted, and they didn't because they were lazy or whatever the case is, not because there were any other issues. So then they're going to be punished more severely. So again, I can't judge that. I have to see what that criteria exactly would be. But the point over here is it's a process, and it's a total process over here. So, as William mentioned earlier, if a person can't run till they learn how to crawl. And you can't study calculus if you don't know algebra or trigonometry. So you got to start somewhere, right? Wherever a person's knowledge is. And when a person learns, they get building blocks. In other words, every little thing they learn, obviously you have to review, but everything a person's going to learn doesn't go to waste. And people will say, come on, Rabbi, is it really true? I have to know this and I have to know that, and I have to know all these details. And the answer is, even if a rabbinical court would never ask you the question, let's say, what would a rabbinical court ask? They may ask, what's the blessing over strawberry? What's the blessing over wine, grape juice? What are the 39 categories of the laws of Sabbath and the laws of Shabbos? They may ask you, different questions about Shabbos, other things, but certain things they may never ask you, right? If a person was cooking meat on the stove and a drop of milk, got into the meat. So there's a whole question about nullification, right? How much milk was against the meat? Does it invalidate the meat? Does it make it a mixture of milk and meat? Does it make that mixture forbidden? What about the pot? What about the utensils? They're probably never going to ask you that. So a person would ask, okay, very good. So if that's true, why do I have to know it? Why in the world do I have to know it? And the answer is because a Jew has to know these things. If you're in the kitchen and something happens, so you have to know, is it a question? Is it not a question? Right? A person's not going to be, on such a level, they'll be able to know exactly, what should I do in this situation? They'd have to ask the local Orthodox rabbi, exactly what to do, but they should know what a question is. If they use an oven, if one oven, they want to use it for milk and meat. There are questions. There are a lot of questions, right? So they have to know what to do. And if there is a mistake, or not, whatever the case is. So there are a lot of things that a rabbinical court may never ask. And it really doesn't matter if they're going to ask or what they're going to ask. A person has to know, right? A person absolutely has to know. So if that is true, so then you have to go through the material anyway. So now the question is going to be, at what level of knowledge does a rabbinical court want to see what a person does, right? In other words, they want to see the actions of what a person does. And they want to see, they're going to ask them questions. Some have very detailed exams, right? So they want to see what level of knowledge that they have, right? And it's got to be more than a basic knowledge. Why do I say that? I mean, basic knowledge is relative. Could be a lot of people have basic knowledge, but, I come in contact with a lot of people that basic knowledge goes out the window because, there are a lot of details they don't know or they don't remember or other cases, whatever the case is, right? Whatever it's going to be. Point is, there's a lot of information, tremendous amount of information. And regardless whether a rabbinical court is going to ask the question or not, it's something Jews have to know. That's true. It's something Jews have to know. Now, rabbinical court wants to see that you have certain level of knowledge. Do you understand what it means on the in the laws of Shabbos? You have a hot plate, you have a crock pot, you have a blech, as we'll call it, a piece of metal you put over your stovetop to heat up food. Do you know how to use it? Do you know how to reheat something? Let's say Shabbos day, you want to put kugel, you want to cook kugel. Am I allowed to put it directly on the hot plate? Am I not? What about timer? I mean, there are a million questions, right? That's not even the point here. The point is that you have to know what you're doing at a certain level of knowledge. Because if not, what's going to happen? A person is going to make mistakes. 100%, they're going to make mistakes. That's it. So, and these are going to be severe prohibitions. Some might be Torah prohibitions. A person, let's say they needed dough. They made it. They need the dough, and on Shabbos, forget they did it on Shabbos. The dough is already prepared. They put it in the oven. The oven's already on. Let's say they put it in the oven. They put it in the oven to cook. A Torah prohibition. All right, person can be liable for the death penalty if somebody warned them and all that. But that's a severe prohibition. Oh, big deal. I forgot. The person has to know. Right. So that's one reason that it can take, a certain amount of time, at least a couple years. But there are other factors. We mentioned one factor, and that is probably the most difficult thing, and that is to move. Because when a person moves into a Jewish community, and you got to be, let's say, within walking distance, so the prices go through the roof when you're close to a synagogue. That's just what happens. That's, supply and demand. Now, a person may not be able to move. They may have a, job issue. May have, financial issue. Could be a number, of different issues over here. But a rabbinical court is not going to take anyone seriously, unless they move into a Jewish community. Because one of the questions the rabbinical court is going to ask is, well, where do you live? So a person will say that, a person, I live in, Sioux City. You say, great, you live in Sioux City. That's beautiful. Are there any Jews there? So you say, no, but there are a lot of water buffalo. So you're going to say, great, there are a lot of water buffalo, no Jews. Like, we'll speak to you when you're serious, because that's part of the criteria. Criteria is you got to live amongst Jews. And again, people are going to say, but, why can't I be Jewish without doing that? Well, how are you going to see practically what to do? I mean, there are only so many YouTube videos. There are so many Rabbi Dr. Google you can ask, on certain things. And if a person doesn't see it, but they have certain level of book knowledge, that's not enough. that most likely is not going to be enough. Why not? And this is a pretty serious thing, because a person can have all the book knowledge in the world. All the book knowledge in the world is not going to butter the biscuit for one very simple reason. And the reason is, it's because they never saw it practically. They never saw it in action. They didn't see somebody shake a lulav. So how do they know they're doing it right? Oh, so they say, listen, didn't you make a video about how to shake a lulav? Yeah. So it could be some things they'll get right. Could be, some things they won't get exactly right. And if they don't get it exactly right, and it's wrong, so they did it wrong. They need repentance for such a thing. Ignorance isn't bliss over here. If a person's, let's say better, if a person's coming into the fold and they want to go through this process, you have to know what you're doing, at a certain level. They're not expecting you to know the ins and outs of all these things, right? This is only the base. I mean, I give 40, 45 classes, in the laws of Shabbos. Is that everything the laws of Shabbos? It covered a lot, right? It covered most, certainly most things, but there are a tremendous amount of details. You take, let's say, the laws of selection. Not allowed to take the good from the bad, whether it's in clothing, whether it's in utensils, whether it's in food. There have been major books written on the topic. Extremely complex. You know what the irony is? The irony is that the Talmud speaks a couple of lines. Over here in that topic. So, but it's complex. So I covered the main things. You cover the main things in all these different things, what I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to do it, and this and that. But people have to learn on their own also. They have to go through things on their own. It's important. I think it's crucial. And this is a whole nother topic we're not really going to get into, right? But it's definitely crucial. There's no question to have someone to teach you. Because, I've seen more and more, people don't have that guidance. They don't have that rabbinic guidance. They get lost. They get lost in a major way. They do things they shouldn't do. They make decisions they should never make, and it causes problems. And, in many different ways. Many different ways. Now, someone will say, what, I have to ask my rabbi if I can go to the bathroom? It's beyond that. Well beyond that. How's a person going to know what to do over here? Right? How in the world is that supposed to be like that? Right? People are going to ask. And the answer is, this is what it takes. So, person's going to say, but I have to jump through so many hoops. And what if you have kids? And what if, and I have to send my kids to a day school, to a school, and it's like college tuition. Well, maybe in the States now, you go to a day school, you take out loans to go to a day school, maybe, they'll renege on the loans, so you won't have to pay it. So maybe it's not a bad idea, right? But you're going to have to pay a lot, that's just the way it is, except if you're in certain places. You pay less, or if there are vouchers or whatever for private school in certain states. But yeah, it goes to the roof, right? It costs a lot. Kosher food, right? It costs a lot. It costs double, triple the price of, certainly in meat, and other things. There's no question. But, and of course there's always a but, a person has to realize why is it this way? And I've heard this many times. I tried to do this, nobody wanted me. They made it too hard. I'm not saying a rabbinical court should make it so hard and break people to the extent where they're just gonna go by the wayside. And they're not going to go through the process. Now, can that happen? It could happen. It definitely could happen. But what's the point? What's the point of making it so hard? Why make it so hard? And the answer is, you have to remember, the Gemara says, Avodah Zarah 2b to 3a, talks about the fact that God went to all the nations. And all the nations rejected the Torah. 100% they rejected the Torah. So if they rejected the Torah, so now you want to be part of the process. For whatever reason, now, you have to go through this process. So why in the world, should we make it so easy? We're not looking for converts. We're not interested in converts, per se. But if someone shows that they're the real deal, right, and this is what they want, fine. They have to hit certain criteria, right? If you want to be a Christian, okay, it could be a lot easier. You want to be a Muslim, same thing. Here, there's plenty what to do. There's plenty what to do, plenty what to know, right? So there's certain criteria. Now, again, I may agree that maybe some rabbinical courts make it way too hard. Could be. I'm not saying they should be ultra lenient, because again, a person has to remember as well, when a person comes in front of a rabbinical court, the rabbinical court signs off. They sign off on the conversion. Now, that means what happens if a person goes sour? What happens if they go sour, 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later? If they go sour, the rabbinical court who signs off, they get all the transgressions. Now, someone who teaches Torah, teaches these people, it's certainly not good for them, right? It certainly makes them look bad. They probably have a portion in these transgressions also. Why? Because you taught someone who wasn't fitting to be taught. You have to be careful who students are as well. Now, is there a guarantee that a person's going to teach someone that student, is going to go off and do terrible things? No. Doesn't necessarily mean that, but a person has to be careful also, right? So now, that being said, so there are a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues. Moving to a community, schooling, kosher foods, learning a person has to do. If you don't, a lot of it you can probably learn by yourself, or as a good chunk of it you can learn by yourself, but it's not the same. Guaranteed, it's not the same as learning with someone else who knows the ins and outs. They're not the same. Definitely not the same. A person learns to, if I was going to ask William to teach me to be a carpenter, I got 3 left hands, right? If I'm going to ask him to, to be an apprentice, he'll probably, throw me out anyway. But, if I would do that, wouldn't I get the skills potentially to learn what it means to be a carpenter, to be an electrician, be a computer programmer, other things? You have to have a certain level of knowledge also. You have to have certain skills, for these things, but somebody has to teach you. It cannot be, and I mentioned one of the first things in my blog, which happens to be down at the moment. It's a technical issue, got to take care of that. But one of the first things mentioned there was a person cannot get through this process based on their own. They just can't. There's just too many things to navigate. There's too much to know. Even though I've come across people seem to be tremendously knowledgeable. But again, there are things and many things that they're probably not going to know. And nuances they're not going to know. So they definitely need direction. I don't think there's any question. Everybody's going to need direction at, some level. And the rabbinical court, one of the questions, this will be a good segue here, one of the questions they're going to ask, there'll be a number of things. One is, do you have a sponsoring rabbi? Now, a sponsoring rabbi means someone on the ground, someone who can vouch for them that they keep kosher, they keep Shabbos, different things, as references. See, I sort of can't do that because I don't live there, but I can certainly write a letter for someone recommending them for conversion. And I've heard people say, oh, come on, doesn't have his own rabbinical court. He can only write a letter for someone. Yeah, but my letter is worth something if you have credentials. If you don't have credentials, you're right. The letter's not worth anything. But the point is, person has to learn. Person has to learn. It can't be done on their own. You can get certain knowledge on your own. Not saying not. Definitely not saying not. But if a person took, let's say, a mentorship, if they took a mentorship, they're learning from someone who's an expert in the field. So someone who's an expert in the field, they're going to get that knowledge. Again, that doesn't have to be world-class knowledge. We're not saying it has to be a PhD, right? A PhD, pilot higher and deeper, or Papa has dough, right? A PhD. So someone has that kind of knowledge. That kind of, they have knowledge. Doesn't have to be at that level, right? But if they have, knowledge that they can give over and they can teach these topics, okay? They have to learn from somebody who knows. They have to go through, their own material as well. You're not just going to be taught over here. A person has to be constantly reading, reviewing, going through Jewish philosophy, Musar, all these things, which now comes up to the $1 million question. And the $1.5 million question. And that is, as I saw someone here point out before in the chat, that there's no rhyme or reason, even if I have to learn, even if they would agree over here, that they can't learn on their own, and that really they have to go through somebody else, right? So before I get there, I'll mention one other thing, right? And that is someone told me many years ago, they've been learning on their own for, I don't know, 8 years, 9 years, something like that. They started my class. It's not I'm not tooting my own horn over here. They started my class. They said it was a different world. Different world. They learned more in a month than they had learned in 9 years. Why? Because it's hard to do things on your own. It's hard to find information on your own. Right? You have someone that's an expert in that field and can guide a person and give over that information, in a way that it's clear, and they're not going to get lost over here. Okay, person has to review, person has to put it into action, but going through, learning by somebody who knows what they're doing, let's say, so that's a whole different world. It's a whole different world. Now, with that being said, someone who's going to teach that person, does that person deserve to be compensated? Now, someone will say, and I'm going to hit this one day in class I give every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern time, for Noahide World Center on Pirkei Avos, on ethics of our fathers, right? That people are going to make the claim, doesn't say by Moses himself. Moses himself taught the Jewish people. He didn't get compensated. He didn't get paid, right? That's true, right? But Moshe had a number of things going for him. One was strength, one was knowledge, and one was wealth. God made him wealthy through the tablets. So he didn't have to worry about charging, right? 100% he didn't have to worry. He had money, right? He was taken care of. So I would agree 100% that, yeah, someone's making money, and let's say they're making good money, very good. So they don't need to charge. That's fine. Code of Jewish law states clearly that you're allowed to charge, right? There's no question why. Why that is. But there is one caveat. The caveat is that you can't charge an arm and a leg. You cannot, if a lawyer, let's say, if a lawyer gets, $300, an hour, you're not going to charge what a lawyer charges, even though your time is valuable. I think, 100%, time is valuable. In the world of, let's say, in the secular world, let's say, of coaching, someone who's a coach, they charge a certain amount for, let's say, whatever their program is. They'll charge a certain amount because obviously they're giving value. So let's say a person decides they want to learn with this coach one-on-one. Now, I got a lot of flack for this. That's why I'm bringing it up. If a person wants to learn one-on-one, certainly with a coach, certainly, let's say, someone who knows what they're doing in internet marketing, and they want to learn one-on-one. So even if they have a course, they charge, I don't know, $200 for this course, $500, whatever it is. You learn one-on-one, you're going to pay a heck of a lot more because you're getting that value. You're getting expertise from someone. I mean, that's what they're claiming over here, which hopefully it's true. And that is, you're getting expertise from an expert in the field. That is worth a heck of a lot. Now, what's the problem? Right? What's the problem? Problem is, they're going to say, hey, but if you're teaching, you can't charge an arm or a leg if you're gonna learn 101. Now again, what's the difference over here? If a person's an expert in the field and you're taking their private time, even if you were telling me however much someone's going to charge, so that should go up exponentially. You're taking their expertise. If you take any course, let's say better. If you're taking any course, online, you're not going to haggle with the price unless you're Jewish, or try and haggle the price, right? In general, you're not going to do that. If it's education, there's value. Some things are more value, some things less value. Doesn't really matter, but there's value. 100% there's value. So therefore, since there's value, then whoever's teaching the course, doesn't matter, if they made the course 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and they're just going through the motions because they know like the back of their hand, they can charge whatever they want, but they're getting value. 100% they're getting value. So why shouldn't they pay for the value? Now, a lot of things, I think there's a cognitive dissonance because people think, or, they've been in the church or whatever the case is, and a lot of things, they take out the hat, you put money in, whatever, church's got plenty of money. So, why should I have to pay for things? And we mentioned the obvious proof. They say, Moses himself didn't charge. Okay. So, I mean, people have said, oh, what you do is extortion. What you do is terrible. You're pawning off of, non-Jews. Not true. It's a service. I don't, let's make clear. I'm not going to turn away anyone because of money. I'm not going to charge an arm and a leg either, right? But I'm not going to turn away anyone, right? Never have. If I ran what I do like a business, I'd be broke, right? But the claim is you shouldn't be allowed to take money for teaching Torah. So that's a good question. Gemara asked the question: how could someone be, a Rebbe for little kids, or for older kids, right? In elementary school or high school, so to speak, or yeshiva. So how can you be compensated? So for little kids, I understand. What are you getting paid for? You're getting paid for classroom control. Yeah, you teach them a little bit here, a little bit there, but that's what you're getting paid for, right? So by older kids, not the case. Certainly not the case. Right? You're getting paid to teach them. To teach them how to learn. Teach them, Musar and other things. That's what you're getting compensated for. What, a teacher shouldn't be getting compensated? Why? It used to be, you have a father teaches kids. So that's the best. If it works out that way, that would be the best. But, we don't live in that world anymore. We live in a very different world. So that being the case, I'd ask a stronger question. So if it's forbidden to take money to teach Torah, how are any of these people, how are women allowed to, to teach girls? They're teaching Torah. I mean, they get paid a lot less. It's a different issue, right? But, they're also teaching over here. They're also getting compensated. Should also be forbidden. 100%, should be forbidden. So it's across the board. It's not just, a person tutors someone else. They shouldn't be allowed to be compensated. So if you're going to tell me you're not allowed to take money for Torah, then tell me across the board. You'll say, well, that's different. They have to make a living. Okay, right? So if somebody graciously wants to give of their time and they have the knowledge, they don't need to be compensated. Okay, right? Some people told me, so why don't you get a real job? I'm like, why? I'm good at this. I do a good job over here, at least according to some people, right? So why shouldn't, it's cognitive dissonance. For anything else, no one is going to squabble whatsoever about being compensated. I had somebody once, fix my washing machine, right? Paid him, whatever. 2 days later, something else went wrong. So I said, am I covered? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, it's a totally different problem, but I'm gonna sit there and say, well, you don't deserve to be paid. I have a friend of mine's a computer consultant. He said, if a person couldn't figure out how to turn on the computer and I walk in the door, and that was the only problem, I'm charging them $100. You're going to say that's extortion. No, that's not extortion. And when a person gets paid, whatever that amount is, whatever they charge an hour, person can decide to take less if they want, this and that. But, unless someone comes in and they don't figure out the problem, etc., they're probably not going to charge them. That's their discretion, right? Even if it's a house call. But nobody gets off scot-free. No one in any other field. That's the point here. Nobody in any other field whatsoever would ask such a question. You would never ask such a question. Well, I have to compensate them? You would never ask the question because a person's going to say in spiritual terms, I shouldn't have to pay. For Torah, I shouldn't have to pay. So either tell me you don't pay for Torah across the board. In other words, teachers in schools, etc., they shouldn't get paid. And anyone who tutors also, you throw anybody who teaches Torah. What about a rabbinical court? What about a rabbinical court takes cases? Monetary cases, divorce cases, they deal with conversion also. They have upkeep, they shouldn't be paid. Why shouldn't they be paid? Right? Now some will take more money, some will take less money, some may take no money, different things. But there are plenty of rabbinical courts take fees, just to cost the the running of it. What about here's the case, right? Here's the case. What about a mikveh? Guy wants to go to the mikveh, or for a woman's mikveh, you don't have to pay. What about upkeep? Right? But we'll keep to the topic here. Well, so Torah a person should be compensated for. Time is not worth money. Why is it not worth anything? I may agree that maybe you can't charge an exorbitant amount. That I would agree. right? As the Shulchan Aruch says, Code of Jewish Law says, you can't charge an arm or a leg, okay? But why is the value of what they do, why is that degraded? Why in the world is that degraded over here? Right? To me, it doesn't make any sense, because any other field, you're not going to have a problem. No one will have a problem paying for anything. It's not a problem. Totally not a problem. Right? No one will argue. But when it comes to this, it's cognitive dissonance, which to a certain extent, I can understand, but they don't look at when a person teaches. They don't look at it that the person has expertise, per se. Or they may say they do have expertise, but I'm still not paying them. Right? They don't deserve to be paid. And there are plenty of rabbinical courts that have their own teachers. And a person's going to pay a fee. I'm not going to say it's exorbitant. It doesn't have to be exorbitant. Right? But someone's giving of their time. They're giving of their time. They're giving of their knowledge. Knowledge is worth something. Right? Someone here points out, very good, God will provide as long as you trust enough. So that means I shouldn't work? I shouldn't do anything? Shouldn't put my best foot forward? So the Vilna Gaon, more than 250 years ago, Rabbi Elijah Vilna said, if you're on that level, you rely on God for everything. Health, you don't go to the doctor. You don't put your best foot forward for anything. For nothing. And you're going to say, I'm going to sit and learn all day, God will provide. Yeah, so if you're on that level, very good. But nobody, very few people, if any, are on that level. They get compensated. They should get compensated. It's not about faith. It has nothing to do with faith. Because you have an obligation to provide. Right? So again, if a person's on that level, very good. So I would advise, buy the book Duties of the Heart. And in the book Duties of the Heart, there's a section called Shar B'tachon, the gate of Emunah, and faith and belief, in God. He doesn't tell you that. He doesn't tell you that at all. God will take care of your needs 100%. Right? No one's disagreeing. Right? No one is disagreeing here. What the argument is, as Duties of the Heart says, is you have to, in this world, disagrees with the Vilna Gaon, with Rav Elijah Vilna, blessed memory, you have to put your best foot forward. You have to work. You have to do something to bring in money. Right? Right? Oh, someone there points out, very good. Some of the sages worked a few hours, right? It's hishtadlus to put their best foot forward, right? Some was a wood chopper, some did other things. 100%. Right? So, a person can be on fixed income. Very true. Very true. But they're going to be limited. I'm not going to say they can't function in society. I've had plenty of people say that a number of people say that they're disabled to get fixed income, and the Jewish people owes them to help them convert. Who says that's our obligation? Right? I know people on fixed income that they're able to convert. Right? It wasn't easy. It took a long time. You have to have faith in God. You have to believe in God. That's not enough. That's not enough. You'd ask any rabbi worth their weight in anything, today, they would tell you across the board, it's not about sitting at home learning and doing nothing. Unless you're at that top level, which nobody is today, right? Nobody's at that level. So you're going to say the great rabbis never had positions? Yeah, but people took care of them. People donated to them, helped them, fine. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the average, everyday Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. You have to have faith. No one's questioning that. Nobody. But you have to put your best foot forward. You can't just say, well, God's going to provide. God will. Or he won't. Or make life difficult, even if you are working. Right? In Duties of the Heart, he says, even if you put your best foot forward, that's no guaranteed success. But you have no choice. In this world, because of the sin of Adam and Eve, you have to eat by the sweat of your brow. You have to work. That's what you got to do. God didn't say, well, just have faith in me. I'll take care of your needs. He's past that. Way past that. Because Adam and Eve ate from the tree. So God says, okay, now you're going to have to work. Because God took care of all his needs in the garden. Took care of all his needs. But he blew it. They ate from the tree. So that all changed. So it's not about just sitting there and doing nothing. I mean, you could be sitting and learning all day. So again, if a person's at that level, good. And most people are not at that level, so you got to put your best foot forward. Even a little bit. Right, someone here pointed out, 2 hours, 3 hours, more, whatever it is. That's what you got. That's the obligation. It's not just about belief. That's the Christian belief. Yeah, I have faith, total faith. Anyone say Christians shouldn't work? I don't know. I could be mistaken here. Someone can correct me. I don't think Christians don't work. Oh, but you got to have that blind faith. Not when it comes to money. Not when it comes to money. No one's going to have that kind of blind faith. Not going to happen. You're gonna tell me people live an aesthetic life and different things and whatever. Okay, right? So you have some people like that. Fine. But everyone else in the world, they're putting the best foot forward. Maybe some are succeeding more, maybe less. But nobody says you don't do anything. And I just sit there and say, well, God's going to provide. It's a joke. Someone, comes to a prospective father-in-law. And the father-in-law says, well, how are you going to support my daughter? So they said, God will provide. So they asked him again. And the future son-in-law said, yeah, God will provide. Said it a number of times. So the future father-in-law said, wow, I've been called a lot of things, but I've never been called God. So you got to put your best foot forward. I don't think there's any question. I don't think there's any question. If a person, again, I'll tell a personal story. So I know somebody, they do the minimal amount to put bread on the table, and God takes care of all their needs. But he doesn't do nothing. He's not just sitting and learning all day. He's putting his best foot forward, even minimally. That's a different issue. Totally different issue. Right? But when it comes to everybody else, you can't do that. So I think there's, a tremendous amount, of cognitive dissonance, over here when it comes to that. And, if someone says, well, charge this amount or whatever, and a person can't pay it, they'll say, well, too bad. You're tough luck. So I don't think a person should do that. Right? I certainly don't do that. Right? Even if you're not charging arm and a leg, doesn't matter. Person can't afford it, they're unlimited income, okay. Right? If a person can help, fine. This isn't extortion. Totally not extortion. People deserve to be compensated. I don't think that's a hard issue to understand, because in every other subject, nobody has an issue. They only have an issue with this. But again, what are you paying for? What are you paying for? You're paying for their expertise. You're paying for their time. Time is worth something. Right? Don't we say time is money? The Chaim said no. Time is life. But we say time is money. So, somebody does something for you, they're on the clock, whatever it is, you'll pay them. You'll pay them whatever it is. And you're not going to complain, because there's value. Someone gives over spiritual value, right? Spiritual things, that's worth more than anything in this world, right? How do I serve God? What do I do? All these different things. That is worth a heck of a lot more, because that's real meaning. That's the only meaning in life. Right? We'll go live here saying that. That's the only meaning in life. It's leading a spiritual life. Right? So, if someone's giving guidance in that, and someone is helping with that, and giving advice and this and that, what? That's not worth anything? I thought that you can't put a monetary value on that. I mean, I could. Maybe, I'd retire to Miami Beach if I could do that. Right? That's worth millions. It's worth millions. And people pay tons of money for things. Because they see the value. So my question would be, that why is that not value? So a person will say, well, it's value, they still shouldn't get paid. So, bottom line, either you're going to tell me across the board, nobody teaching Torah should be paid, or just the small guys like us that, that tutor, or that give classes. And there are plenty of people that give classes. Guess what? People donate to them and help them in their cause, giving tithes to them. That helps build them up. So, here's a plug to what wil'liam does. Support him. Does a heck of a lot. Works day in and day out to give all these great programs, over here. You should be supported. You should be helped. If you can give more, give more. If you give less, give less. Tremendous thing. Anyone who's got a worthwhile organization and they're giving their blood, sweat, and tears, to do this, they should be helped. 100% they should be helped. You can say, oh, but they, they're only teaching. They don't deserve to be paid. Why not? They deserve to be helped. There's so many things that can be done. If people take out a little money, out of their pocket, right, so to speak. And many, many things can be done. But see, when there are real causes, the evil inclination is out there so strong. So you got real causes that it's like, People have to go all over the world to push pennies together. In the Reform Conservative movement, they have, tons of money. Tons of money. There's also a lot of money in the Orthodox community, right? But there, give the money in one shot, so very good. So here we have to work harder because the evil inclination makes it that much harder. Makes it that much harder in order for these things to be built. And, yeshivas are always in the red. They always have difficulty because, it's like a bottomless pit. You always need money. So these good institutions should be supported. Why not? Why shouldn't they be supported? Because they're not doing anything? They're not teaching the future generations. Think about these people that are coming up, that want to convert. Where would they be? And it's not tooting my own horn. I'm plenty of other good people out there also. Where would they be without people to teach them? Where would they be? No, they'd be nowhere. They'd get a certain amount of information on their own, true. Right? But everyone here, I'm not getting paid here. I mean, I'm going to up my salary a little bit now. But, no one over here is getting paid. This is a free service. I'm not saying I should be compensated for it. Not to mention the lack of sleep I get. That's a different issue. Right? But this is giving information to people who need it. People, coming out of Christianity. That service is worth a lot. It's worth a lot. Save lives. Many, many lives. And turn their lives upside down in a positive way. Where they learned, they got building blocks, and, they reached potential. They got help to reach potential. You can't put a price tag on that. Wish I could. You can't put a price tag on that, but that is worth everything. And not only that, but someone's willing to give their time. Why in the world shouldn't they be compensated? Should be compensated. People ask me questions all over the world. I don't charge them for that. Could in theory. I would never do it. Right? You got to say, come on, that's a little bit, you can't exaggerate this. Okay. Right? People should be compensated for what they do. They should. Because they're giving over their time. They're giving over their expertise. And in any other field, nobody would have an issue. They wouldn't. They wouldn't have an issue. They have an issue. And I'm going to call it cognitive dissonance. That's what it is. Because in anything else, they would never complain. They would never complain. Yeah, so I guess we'll leave it at that. So good. I'm not the best spokesperson. Okay, find other people. No one's obligated to listen to me. That's fine.
Makes sense. Okay, cool. All right, fair enough. So thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate you all tuning in and subscribing. Turn on notifications, and we'll see you same time, same place next week, Hashem willing. And if you guys have any topics you would like to have covered on controversial issues, please send them to me. Message me on Facebook or send them to tanaktalkquestions@gmail.com. So, Rabbi, thanks again for your time, and we'll see you all a little later. Peace out, everybody.